remember me, Jason? Jason, don't you remember? Remember, Jason. Jason, remember. Remember.
Tonight we're going to head back to Crystal Lake with Friday the 13th Part 4. Let's get at it.
Remember, we keep it tight, and it's a podcast world. We're ready to ignite. That's the lesson. We got it all. Tune in, turn up, come vibe with us, y'all. So remember.
Continuing with our summer campfire series, this week we're going to start off with Friday the 13th Part 4. And how we start off every show is going to be Guess the Kill Scene. So I'm going to play this clip from it's from this movie, and you guys try to pick which kill scene it is. So here we go. All right, what do you guys think the kill was? Let's hear it. Daniel, you go first.
Let's let Kade and Brent go first.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We have to go first, just to be fair.
Okay, Kade, you kick it off then.
Yeah, I guess we'll just give our answers and then you can tell us who's right at the end or whatever.
Yeah.
My guess is based on the sound. Is it the Axel guy at the beginning of the movie? That's my guess.
All right, Kade says Axel. Who you got, Brent?
That was one of my guesses, but I think that it's the guy in the shower that gets his hand through his eyeballs.
Oh, okay. I don't remember his name. Okay. All right, Daniel, who is it?
Man, I thought it was Paul in the lake after he discovered his dead girlfriend in the thing. He was swimming back. And
that's
then
my favorite kill scene.
He got killed.
Yeah, that's everybody's favorite kill scene.
Harpoon to the crotch is what I said.
All right, Kade gets it right. It was Axel from the very first.
There you go, man. I wasn't thinking Axel. Hey, I'll give you a fun fact on Axel. Okay, he was also in a comedy series called Police Academy. He played one of the police officers in Police Academy, and he was like this. He's kind of a klutz, and so he would arrest people without trying to arrest them. This one guy, he walked up on, he was working on a car, and the hood was popped up on the car, and he had his nightstick over his shoulder, and he was talking to the guy, and when he turned around, the nightstick hit the thing on the hood, and the hood slammed down on the guy, and he was trying to steal something out of the engine. But that was Axel's character right there.
Yeah, that dude was just sitting there watching some old workout video, those 80s workout videos, just sitting there and watching them shake their butts. A lot of that was just sitting there.
That was the first scene in this movie that we knew Kade was going to pick up on.
Good deal, man. Good deal.
Surely this movie was Oscar nominated or something. Choreography.
You know what's funny about that first scene is that's not just a workout video. I've done some research on that, and that's in the 80s. That was actually some softcore porn.
I bet you did some research.
Look here, man, it's for the podcast.
I bet you did some research.
Yeah, I watched that scene 20 times, just to make sure I got their movements down.
Yeah.
That's
they were burning calories, that's for sure. You feel me?
Yeah. Corky's that looks familiar. Oh yeah, I saw it.
This is a good one.
All right, guys. Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter. It starts out a carefree lakeside vacation is interrupted by the reemergence of the killer Jason Voorhees after he escapes from a morgue, leaving bodies in his wake. Jason travels to Camp Crystal Lake, where a group of friends are staying. The teams meet some locals, Tommy and Trish, as well as a secret hitchhiker called Rob. As the group of teenagers engages in drunken debauchery, their numbers begin to dwindle, and the pieces of the past resurface. Now, what I loved about this movie, as you can tell behind me, it's probably one of my favorite movies of this franchise. This movie takes place maybe an hour and a half after Part 3. The police are there, picking up the bodies, sorting stuff out, the crime scene tapes out. And that's what I love about these first movies in this franchise. They all take place on the same weekend. And, when this movie came on, you're right there at the barn that you're used to seeing in part 3 where basically everybody gets killed at. And then Jason's laying there dead. So, Kade and Brent, you guys are the young ones of the group watching these movies for the first time. What did you think about it when you first seen that you were right back at the scene from the third movie?
Well, I really like when movies do that, so I thought it was
Yeah, I
cool.
do too.
I know Halloween does that with Halloween Part 2. That is one cool thing about these movies. It does seem like there's a continuation with the stories, with Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and now Part 4, back to back to back. So that is a cool part of this movie.
Yeah, this was awesome to see because, obviously you guys reviewed part 3 while I was sitting on a cruise ship. So I watched part 3 and part 4 this week, almost back to back. And part 3 was, I'm not going to say too much about it because I know you guys already touched on it, but that movie was so entertaining. Everything from this guy named Shelly to this biker gang, like, I absolutely loved it. And so, kind of like what Brent was saying, when this movie picking up right where it left off, I really, really like that. And, the fact that they actually wheeled Jason all the way to, a hospital and to a morgue, I didn't know anything like that happened, but I knew something was going to go sideways. But, kind of like what we touched on earlier, we did get one of the best scenes in the movie with this choreography scene on the TV there, when this dude's trying to woo this girl and she's sitting there beside him, and instead of whenever she's not paying attention, he just flips the channel back onto it. That was cracking me up, man. I thought that was hilarious.
Well, there's definitely some interesting characters in this movie. Let's start off with Axel, man. This dude obviously works at the morgue at the hospital, and they bring Jason in as well as all the other bodies from part 3, And this dude's, he's just hitting on the nerves trying to, plan the rest of his night out while he's back there, putting up all these not only dead bodies, but murdered dead bodies. He's even talking about how hot one of them looks over there, even though she's dead. This guy is warped in the head, man. He seems like he would probably end up on a Silence of the Lamb movie or something like that in the future.
He sat his sandwich on Jason's corpse and
just
continued to eat it.
That was what I was about to say. Is they come rolling in Jason there, and he's got to sign off on him, and he's eating a sandwich to begin with, like he's in there with all these dead bodies and stuff, and he's eating this sandwich, So they roll Jason in, and they're like, "Hey, I need you to sign him in and all this," and he goes, "Oh, okay." Lays the sandwich on the dead body, signs him in, and then picks it back up and continues to eat it, like it. Yeah.
That dude is gross, man. Gross.
These movies are like such a, we talked a little bit before the show, like, a sign of the times. Like, it's almost like, that they do certain things where, like, I haven't seen as many movies from, like, the 80s, like, you guys have. But just like it almost seems like they do stuff as a parody at times. And then all of a sudden you see Jason just like do the most outlandish kill ever. Like when Axel dies, like what we're talking about in the kill scene, I'm pretty sure he grabs like a handsaw or something.
Yeah, it's a bone saw. He grabs a bone saw.
And cuts his throat and then he twists his neck or something brutal like that. And I'm like,
yeah, that's your typical Tom Savini there. Tom Savini came back to this movie because it was supposed to be the ending of the franchise. So they got him to come back and do the special effects for this movie. That's why a lot of these death scenes were so gruesome, because you had the master in there working on them and stuff like that. But yeah, another cool character that they introduced in this movie was Rob. Now, did you guys know that Rob is the older brother of the young girl from part 2 that was killed? You remember me telling you guys she was underage and they had to cut some of the scenes that she filmed? All right, he's actually her older brother, and he's looking for Jason because, they found out over the last night or two that she has been killed. So he has loaded up his gun, and he's coming to the woods trying to find Jason. And you remember, all this has happened just in a couple days. So he's already packed up and came to the woods looking for the person that killed his sister. And I thought he was an interesting character to just show up like that.
Yeah, the acting on that wasn't real good on his part, and we'll get more into that,
No.
But it was kind of comical with some of his lines.
Yeah. I didn't. Nobody in this movie is going to win an Oscar, that's for sure.
Oh,
but
some of these people.
I don't know.
I was about to say the scene where you introduced to Rob is very close to the giant skinny dipping scene where everybody just decided they're just going to jump in the water butt naked.
Look, we go from, werewolf orgies to skinny dipping scenes, man. I don't understand how this stuff happens. The 80s was just a special time.
Well,
That's all I can say.
This was prime 80s right here. Friday 13th Part 4. I think it come out in 84. It was in the heyday of 80s slasher films. So it was high body count. It was high on the gore with a lot of blood, a lot of gore, and it was high on nudity. So you'll remember in Part 3, the film was shot a lot differently than this film was. And what I mean by that is in Part 3, it focused a lot on the stalking aspect of Jason. A lot of people would look down to the barn and they would see somebody go in the barn, or they would see a barn door swinging, and there was a lot of shots with Jason in it, him standing in the background, different things like that. This one and Part 3 had limited nudity, if you remember that. So this one, just a year later, or a couple of years later, they come out with it. A lot more nudity. You kind of went back to the POV of Jason. You didn't see him a lot until kind of the third act. You just saw a lot. You didn't see his mask a lot. You saw a lot of his hands, his feet. Kind of like, when he walks up on the hitchhiker and she's eating the banana, you just saw his feet. Now we've kind of gone back to Part 2 with the way that Part 2 was kind of shot. So it was a lot different looking movie. But Part 4 is one that I have probably seen Part 4 more times than I've seen any of the other ones. Probably by a long shot. Parts, 4 and probably Part 6, maybe even Part 5. That's the ones that I've seen the most amount of times. And Part 4, by far, I've probably seen 30 times, where I've seen all the other ones 10 or 15 times.
Yeah, you're probably right. Let me think. Another character we're introduced to one of the main characters of the entire franchise is Tommy Jarvis, which is played by Corey Feldman in this movie. We find him, he's like what does he think? He's like 12 years old, something like that.
Yeah, he's a young kid for sure, like 12, 13.
Yeah, and the dude that played Jason didn't like him because Corey Feldman... Feldman, yeah, in the documentary that I watched, all of the teenagers and the guy that played Jason and all them, they were kind of cool with each other, and they kind of looked at Corey Feldman like he was just like this little kid, and they wouldn't pay no attention to him. And so Corey Feldman wanted attention, so he would kind of act out, and he would show off, and he was all wanting to try to hang out with the adults and stuff, and they wasn't having that, And so it was funny because the dude that played Jason actually said, "I didn't care for him. I thought he was a little, just a little twerp,
little brat or
around.
something."
Yeah, basically like a little brat.
He was one of the. With what he did in the movie, when we talk about it at the end, he does exactly what you want every character to do in a movie when the antagonist is on the ground. Double tap, and he
you got to double tap.
Like what we talk about, when we get towards the end of it, but
Corky, that was really cool.
I know this is like you have the poster up. This is one of your favorite movies. How nostalgic do you and Daniel? How nostalgic do you feel watching this movie? Because it sounds like this is a high one on the list for you guys.
Well, I can say this. This is what I call a comfort movie for me. I can put this movie on at night, go to sleep to it. Put it on during the day. It's playing in the background. Friday the 13th, especially parts 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, are what I would call comfort movies. I can put them on any day of the week and just sit down and watch them. If they said, "Hey man, you've got 10 movies, you can only watch these 10 movies the rest of your life," probably some of these movies would be a part of that.
It's for your favorite of the franchise.
Movies. Do what?
It's for your favorite of the franchise?
No, Part 6 is by far my favorite of any of them. But Part 4 is probably fourth.
Part 4 was my favorite for a long time. It was my favorite when I was a kid. It was my favorite, all through teenage years and early adult. I really started liking Part 3 better. Kind of, I'm not real sure. I just really got into Part 3. So parts, 3 and 4... for me are the two favorite ones for me. But, just like what Corky was saying, Part 2, they played on USA Up All Night all the time in the 80s and 90s. And that just about every Friday night, almost, Part 2 was on. It was on USA. So I've seen that, multiple times, the edited version. But parts 3 and 4, 100% going to be my favorite. I really like part 6 as well, but it's zombie Jason versus human Jason, and I always preferred human Jason to zombie Jason.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because in the course of the week, getting ready for these podcasts, I always listen to some other podcasts and just see what everybody else is saying about the movies and stuff like that. And a couple of the podcasts I listen to, they talk about how, why is Jason so tough in this movie? Is he a demon or whatever? I got to reiterate to everybody that in parts 2, 3, and 4, Jason is still a live human being. At the end of this movie is when Corey Feldman kills him. And this is when Jason actually dies. And obviously in part 5, the killer is an imposter. But up until part 4, Jason is a human being. That's why you hear him grunting and you hear him, moaning when somebody kicks him in the crotch and stuff like that. All these other podcasts are saying he's a demon or a zombie or something. At this point, he's not. The lore of the movie, if you read some of the books, and it's just understood that he survived the drowning and just decided to hide out in the woods because there was some abuse or whatever. I don't really know the whole story. But it's just understood that he survived the drowning, and this is just Jason as a human being. He's not resurrected at this point. Like Daniel said, that happens in part 6. And that's when we get supernatural Jason, is in part 6. But before we get too deep into this, Kade, run down the cast for us, buddy.
Yeah, I was just about to, bring that up. We got a couple iconic people in this movie, some that I even recognize. I'll start with our boy Tommy Jarvis here. He's played by Corey Feldman, like we mentioned before. And Corey Feldman was in actually one of my favorite movies, which I love, The Goonies. So as soon as I saw him in this, I was like, that's really, really cool. And, of course, he was in Stand By Me. And I think another movie you guys have reviewed, The Lost Boys.
Yeah, The Lost Boys.
Yeah.
And we definitely need to do The Goonies as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big Goonies fan.
100%.
Going on from there, we have Tommy's sister, Trish. She's in a few other films that I've looked up when I was doing some research. I'm not too familiar with a lot of them, but she's played by Kimberly Beck. We have Rob Deere, played by Eric Anderson. And this other actor here is one that I recognized, and I was sitting there watching it last night. I was like, I swear this guy was in Back to the Future. But you've got Jimmy, played by Crispin Glover. He was, I think he was, Marty McFly's dad, I think, from back in the day. He was like a super big goofball. So he's playing another goofball in this movie. So, that makes the most sense. And, I'll go ahead and we talked about him beforehand, but Jason Voorhees, this movie is played by Ted White. I'm not sure if this is the same guy who's dressed up as Jason in the last couple films, but this is a big dude.
Jason was played by a different person in every movie up through part 7. I think is when Kane took over.
Yeah,
Kane Hodder started playing him, and then Kane Hodder become the official Jason in parts 7, 8, 9, and 10.
See, I'm just not a Kane Hodder fan. Everybody sees him as Jason. I just don't. I guess it's because the movies he played Jason in sucked. Nothing against old Kane. But he's not Jason to me. Richard Brooker is always Jason to me. He's the guy that played him in part 3.
Yep, Richard Brooker is Jason for me. He's the official look. When I think about Jason, I think about the Richard Brooker Jason, which was part 3 Jason.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Where else we need to go? Brent, money-wise, what this movie pull in, buddy?
All right, so this movie grossed $33 million, and it had a budget of $2.2 million.
Dang.
So just to put that into comparison, Part 1 grossed $59.8 million, Part 2 grossed $21.7 million, and Part 3 grossed $36.7 million. So that actually puts this movie coming in the second lowest grossing Friday the 13th movie thus far, right above Part 2. So that kind of surprised me, because
that surprises me too.
I thought Part 4 was one of the most successful ones of the franchise.
Well, it was
Still
making money,
there.
and it was putting butts in seats.
It
and
still made a lot of
money.
money.
That's all they do.
No
Yeah.
wonder we got a part 5. If you had a budget of $2 million and made over almost 40, I think that done pretty good.
They knew they weren't going to be done with this, and
I
what
think
you're
that
talking
actually
about-
was the plan, though, when they filmed the movie, was to end it right here. But money talks, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I know
So,
you said you don't think he has any supernatural abilities at this point, right?
no.
Well, so let me. So he
Because
can
he survives
still.
like part 3 with his neck getting
He can
snapped from the
still.
rope.
He can still regenerate. And
He's
what I
crazy,
mean by
yeah.
that is he. You know, every time he gets hit, whatever, he gets chopped in the head, he gets chopped in the shoulder, takes an axe to the head, takes a machete to the shoulder, he gets his neck broke, he can still get up. So he's regenerating at that point. And the other supernatural ability that he already has is the teleporting. So he can, you know, be on one side of the room, and then all of a sudden you turn around to run and he's standing right there.
Besides his regenerative abilities and his transporting, he's not supernatural at all.
That's a
Well, see, I wouldn't.
typical horror movie, though. That's a
I
typical
wouldn't really
horror
call
movie.
it teleporting, like he said. I would call it just your typical horror movie, you know, type of scenario. And,
Could you
and
imagine
the
Jason just,
regenerating
like,
thing, I
fully
look at it
sprinting?
like this. You know, Jason was born special. Let's put it that way. And you know, he's like
He's
the
really tough.
Energizer Bunny. He takes a licking and keeps on ticking, man. But when he took that machete to the forehead at the end of the night here, that was all it wrote for him, though. So you know, it ended up for him. So this movie follows the Jarvis family. Whatever happened with the dad? Is he just dead, divorced? Did
No,
they ever
he's-
explain that?
He's divorced and he actually lives in their house. So the Jarvises don't actually live at that particular house. That is their summer house. That's on the
Yeah,
does
lake.
everybody
So,
yeah,
rich
which
in
is
these-
crazy. I know, that's crazy.
Yeah, noticed that?
so the mom took the 2 kids and she moved into the summer house, and the dad has the other house, and the dad just he's mentioned, and they give him just a little bit of 2-line backstory, and that's about all that is for the dad.
It's usually how it goes, man.
But yeah, they've got that one, and then they've got a house that I guess is being rented out, and that's when Crispin Glover and his buddies show up, and they're going to rent this house for the week.
And
Crispin
basically
Glover,
it just becomes a sex house for the rest of the. That was all they were planning
Yeah.
on.
Well, yeah, that's basically all it was. Let's talk about the iconic skinny dipping scene. I think that's they arrive at the cabin or house they're going to rent for the weekend, and they're like, "Let's go for a walk, man!" And they start taking off down this trail walking. They run up on the twins, and the twins don't know them from Adam and Eve, and they're like, "Yo, let's go to the lake," and they're like, "Okay, we'll go with you." And as soon as we get there, one of them says, "Skinny dip." And they're all swinging on this rope to go into the water, and none of them know how to swing on a rope because
They're all
all they do is
smacking
crash
into the
into the water every time they swing on it, you know?
One of them hit the water before the rope.
Yeah,
hit.
Not a single
nobody
one.
done a good swing at all. And so I guess they just all decided, you know, even though these twins are like, "We don't know you guys, but let's go ahead and get naked and get in the water because, you know, this is Crystal Lake. That's what we do around here, you know?"
Yeah, it worked out for those 2 guys. Well, you know, what's his name?
Computer?
Crispin there. Yeah,
yeah,
Crispin
well,
and
yeah.
his buddy. Like I don't know what he was talking about with his computer. He's like, "My computer says,
Yeah,
you're
I
like,
have no idea.
whatever."
He
And I'm
was
like,
just a big
what is he
jerk. What
talking
was his
about?
name?
Ted.
His name was
Teddy Bear, yeah.
yeah.
That was
All he did, the whole movie. That first scene talks about the computer.
Yeah.
Second scene tries to get the girls. He's like, "Oh, I'm Teddy." Kiss the teddy
Yeah.
bear. And then the third scene, he's just watching the 1920s porn.
Bro.
The whole rest of the movie.
He watched it for at least like it had like an hour like in the movie time like in
Yes.
the world because this dude was
So
I'm
what,
like,
what
is
I
it
want
that
to know
funny?
is, where does he even find this roll of 1920s?
It was in a like some sort of chest
Box or
yeah, it was in like a cupboard or something.
I mean, the writers had to come up with something for him to be doing, and he
Yeah, they
didn't have
needed
no
him to
woman,
be
you know,
doing something, yeah.
So he sets up, and then all of a sudden he finds this screen, you know, that he pulls
Yeah.
up, and he's got the projector.
And he
hooked
found the
up.
projector. That's where do you just find a projector and a screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, that was old technology even for then. You know, how would he even know? I wouldn't know how to hook up a reel-to-reel movie and watch it, you know?
Like,
Yeah.
But going back to the skinny dipping, you know, if you guys are viewers are constant viewers of our podcast, you know that Kade, he likes some of the butt cracks. You know, he's the butt crack guy. So
He's
we're starting a new.
known as the butt inspector. Everybody.
He's
listen,
Cade the butt inspector. So we've got this new thing we're gonna do with each of our movies. It's gonna be Cade's butt meter, and so I think this is the best scene to do it on. It was the most butts available. So I would say, how high was the Cade's butt meter on this scene?
This experience on this show has been great so far. You know, Howling 2 established a standard for me. Well, really, it goes back to like
The Shining.
Alien with the low cut underwear. You know, you go to The Shining.
Did start with Alien, didn't it?
It started with Alien, which was the first. It was
the first episode I was on. You know, in terms of movie reviews here. And obviously the Howling, hairy, hair glued to people's butts. This movie in particular, I knew what I was in for when I saw the choreographed dance scene, the butt shaking on the screen. I knew what they were setting up here. And, this kind of segues into something I was wanting to talk to you guys about. Such a big part of these movies are the cast of, like, teenagers or young college, kids that make up, the movie. After watching Part 3, and seeing this one guy do a handstand in front of the shower. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, that's Andy.
He just does a handstand and then gets cut in half. Do you think that the cast of teenagers, gets better every movie, or do you guys feel like, you enjoyed one from Part 3 better, or did you really like this one? I think this one was pretty funny. I kind of liked them, but
they had some really good kills in this one. And they had some funny dialogue. They probably had more comedic elements in this one than they had in the previous ones as far as the funny dialogue. Now, you had the guy from Part 2 that was the practical joker. He ended up going drinking with everybody, and he was one of the ones that ended up living. That had some comedy in it. But this really had some good dialogue, especially between Jim and Ted. With the whole computer, and he's sitting there telling him that he's no good in bed, and that's why the girls won't stay with him. And then he winds up being the one that's left out. He winds up being the one that's having to watch the 1920s video. The dynamic was always. It's always got some pretty cool teenagers in it. I don't know which one's my favorite teenagers or whatever, but it's got a good dynamic, and it's got good dialogue, and it's got good kills.
Well, I'm going to say this set of teenagers is my favorite, and I'll say it because of their twins. That's always good. And what was the brown-haired girl's name in this movie?
The one that
can't remember now.
Went to take a shower with the guy?
No, she got killed in the boat.
In the boat?
Out there.
That was Samantha.
Samantha played
Well, let me tell
Judy.
you something. I had the biggest crush on her. Like, I would watch this movie just to watch her, man. I had the biggest crush on her. I can't even explain it, man. That's all I'm saying.
Let me give you some more behind the scenes for Samantha. And then we're jumping ahead here a little bit, but in the boat scene, she gets mad. One of the twins that they meet, I always refer to them as the double mint twins. They don't in the movie, but like everybody calls them double mint twins. Yeah. One of the twins gets with her girl, Paul, so he starts dancing with her. She gets mad. She goes down to the lake, takes off her clothes, swims out to the little boat there, and then she winds up getting killed by Jason in the boat. So the behind the scenes thing that I was watching, the guy that played Jason actually had to tell the director, it's like, if you keep her out here in this boat any longer, I'm going to quit. I'll walk because of it. Because when they were filming, it was really cold and the water was super cold. And she actually got hypothermia filming that scene, the death scene. And so the dude that played Jason actually came to her aid in real life and was like, we're going to shoot this scene one more time and you're going to get what you get, and we're going to get her wrapped up in a blanket because it's too cold for her to be out here with no clothes on in this cold water.
Exactly. Yeah, I read that too. The cast actually hated the director. Who directed the movie, guys? Anybody know?
I can't remember. Let me pull it up here. The dude that directed it, he was not well liked by the cast at all.
Yeah, they actually hated him. And another thing, guys, is you remember the scene where he takes the guy's head in the shower and is hitting it up against the wall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was actually having to hit this guy's head up against the wall. And they kept redoing the take. And finally, he turned around and he said, I'm not going to do this to this guy again. He told the director, he said, you get one more take. He said, I'm not going to keep pushing this kid's head up against this wall. You've got one more take and we're done. So that's twice he had to get on the director, taking up for these kids. You know, Jason had to take up for the kids.
The director's name was Joseph Zito.
Yeah, from what I understood, the whole cast hated him, man. Could not stand him.
Yeah, he hasn't done a lot of movies. He did some movies with Chuck Norris, and then that's about it.
Well,
look, man, if
he's filming with Chuck Norris,
yeah, he better fly right messing with that guy. But but yeah, the cast hated him. And where are we at in the movie? We've jumped way ahead, but that's all right. But
we were at the skinny dipping.
Oh yeah, we were at the skinny dipping scene, and really, it's your typical slasher movie. After that, we just go home and people start doing their own thing and start getting killed. But another scene that always stands out in my mind when I watch this movie is before all this going out and getting on the boat and getting killed and all that good stuff, they're all standing in there and they start putting on music and start dancing, right? And Crispin Glover does the most god-awful dance anybody's ever seen in their life.
I didn't know. Was that supposed to be a joke or?
No, that's how that dude danced, man.
Yeah,
Fun fact about it is they were actually dancing to Back in Black by AC/DC. Couldn't get the rights to the song. So they had to dub over it with that, music you hear in the movie.
Whatever that was.
So not only was he dancing all good Lord crazy, but he was actually Back in Black was playing while he was doing it. I thought that was pretty cool.
And he wasn't choreographed to do that. He didn't practice anything. He just did it like impromptu.
Yeah, Crispin Glover, from what I've read, he's kind of real hard to work with.
He is.
I don't know if this was his first movie or not, but he was even kind of a diva in this movie because the movie started filming either the day of or the day before Halloween. So I reckon the whole cast took Corey Feldman trick-or-treating. So they're walking him around, letting him trick-or-treat, and they go into a store. Yeah. So they go to a store, I guess, and they're all getting them some snacks or whatever before they go back to the set. And he buys him a little submarine, like a little yellow submarine. I think it's like a Beatles album or something like that. But he buys him a little toy submarine. They go back, and he gets in they're having lunch. He gets in a little boat, pedals out to the middle of the lake, puts the submarine in the water. Submarine floats to the bottom of the water. It's a toy. It's what submarines do. They go underwater, right? So he freaks out, wanting his submarine back. He can't find it. So he tells the director, he said, I'm not doing any more scenes until we find my submarine. He made the crew dive into that lake and spend time finding that submarine before he would continue acting.
Good God.
Serious?
You know what? At this point in time, this was before Back to the Future. This was before Back to the Future or any of these other movies he's done. I think he would have had to have just kicked rocks at that point. If you're going to hold up my production to go swimming for a toy.
Yeah,
that's not happening.
Because you can just drive right back to town and buy another toy at the same place as you got it. What's your idiot butt doing out there in the middle of the lake anyway with a submarine toy?
Yeah, you're
like,
how he's probably an adult at this point. What's he doing playing with a submarine in the lake?
Yeah, well, keep in mind, like he said about the hypothermia scene, it's November. If they started filming around Halloween, it's obviously November or at least October 31st when this was going down.
Yeah.
So, you can swim to the bottom of that cold lake yourself, buddy. It ain't happening, man.
So, Crispin Glover is well known to be hard to work with. He always... Let's see, what was it? He didn't want to do one of the Back to the Future movies because he said that there was a lack of depth of character. Like, really?
Really? Playing a goofball.
I mean, you're Marty McFly's dad. You need any more depth of character than that? Come on, man. But he is notorious for turning down what are, good roles for other people. I mean, he'll turn them down for, like, stupid things like that. He's kind of an eccentric kind of person. That's just his personality.
He ain't got no need to be.
And, he's kind of hard to work with. But He was he ended up being your A-list actor from there. Him and Corey Feldman. That's the two A-list actors from that movie. And it was before they were A-list actors. They ended up Back to the Future is what made Crispin Glover, and he filmed that a year or so after Friday the 13th. And then of course Corey Feldman started gaining popularity from Friday Part 4, and then he ended up doing Stand By Me in '86 and Lost Boys in '87. And then him and Corey Haim just took off and did all kinds of teenage movies like License to Drive and Dream a Little Dream, and they was in a big old bunch of movies together. So that's kind of what happened with that.
And then Corey Feldman went crazy, and we don't know what happened to him. He became Michael Jackson.
Well, yeah. Well, apparently they got into the wrong crowd with the Hollywood crowd. Yeah. There was some drug use involved, and then there was some adults that took advantage of them monetarily and in different different ways with them. And I don't know what's true and what's not. But it was to hear Corey Feldman talk about it. It was pretty bad in a lot of different ways. People take advantage of them with money and all kinds of different things.
I think that's with all young actors, man. You don't see anybody that grew up acting as a young kid. They never turn out normal. There's always something screwed up about them.
They're either for somebody young.
Child actors that I've seen, and this is off topic, but child actors that I've seen, you do the where are they now?
Yeah.
The ones that I've seen have either grown up in the business and ended up becoming weird, or they don't do movies at all anymore and they just have normal jobs now.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are some exceptions.
There's a few. Like Drew Barrymore, she ended up doing okay.
Okay, well, my favorite kill is gonna be Axel's kill with the bone saw to the throat and the twisting his head. I mean, that was a really, really cool kill scene. Probably one of the best of this movie, or not of this movie. One of the best of this franchise so far.
It was really gruesome. So you really see, I can't remember his name, Corky, the guy that comes back in and helps with the kills and the special effects. What's his name?
Tom Savini.
You really feel like they kind of put an exclamation point here to show you he's back with that gruesome kill. There was a lot of good kills in this movie. I think one of my favorites is probably the groin one. I think that might be, our fourth death or something like that in the movie. But, later on in the film, you see the shower scene with that one guy where Jason comes in there and the guy in the shower thinks somebody's about to join him, that girl he was dating or whatever. He ends up grabbing his head and you really start to see the supernatural, whatever you call it, strength of Jason, where he mashes his skull in and almost crushes it. And
yeah,
so
that
I was
crazy.
Like, God, that one was insane. Daniel, we're just talking about some of the iconic kills from the movie, just kind of which one's our favorite.
I mean, do you think from the movies we've seen so far from Friday the 13th franchise, do any of the previous kills match up to the Axel's kill and then the guy in the bathroom or in the shower? So one Axel's kill, he gets the bone saw to the neck. That's sick. And then the guy in the shower gets his head crushed. I can't think of, in the previous movies, I can't think of anything that would compare to those.
You guys are leaving out the best death scene of the whole movie. The best death scene of the whole movie is when Jason gets killed. Tommy takes
of course.
She takes that machete, puts it halfway through his head, then he falls down and it just slides down his head. Now listen, the version that you guys watched cut out a whole lot of that scene. The director's uncut version, it shows his whole head slide down that machete and just pop open.
Oh.
They couldn't put that on the theatrical version. But yeah,
it's awesome.
You see a little bit of his head sliding down the blade there, but then you don't see him getting slashed by Tommy or anything like that.
Well, you don't. Even in the uncut version, all you do is see Tommy hit him in the head, and then he falls down on the machete. His head slides off. but then he's just laying there. And then Tommy and Trish are hugging, and then Tommy looks over and sees Jason's fingers moving, and that's when he starts chopping him. And so in part 4, you don't actually see the machete going into Jason's body. You just see Tommy swinging the machete.
Yep. Well, before, Daniel, you got disconnected, I was going to segue into trivia. You want to go ahead and do trivia tonight?
Shoot, man.
Then we'll wrap it
some.
up. Let's see who wins this week with your awesome
I got some
trivia that you
trivia
always
for you.
give us.
We got us a few questions here, so I'll go ahead and open it up. We've already answered this question, so it should be the easiest one if we can remember. What comedy was Axel in previous? What
Police
movie
Academy.
comedy? All right, Corky with the point.
Yeah, I'll take it.
All right. So number two, what were the dates on Pamela Voorhees' headstone?
Brent.
Go ahead, Brent.
I don't know the month and the day, but the years was 1930 to 1979.
Very good. Brent with the point coming in.
Bonus
And
question.
actually, it does not say the months. It just had the years.
Hey,
All right,
quick
so-
bonus question, though. What does it say at the bottom of her tombstone under the dates?
It's
I have
at
no idea.
rest.
Yeah, at rest. I thought that
At
was
rest.
different.
Interesting.
Yeah.
She's headless, but yeah, she's at rest.
And then,
Hey, that's
then I
two, that's
thought
2
about that
points for
too.
me.
All right, so number 3, what is the kill count in this movie?
Kade,
Go ahead, Cade.
is it 13?
13, and there's a little bit of controversy on that 13 if you want to discuss Gordon.
Who's Gordon?
So Gordon is the golden retriever.
Wait a
Oh,
minute.
yeah.
Did Gordon get killed?
I don't know if he
Gordon,
got...
I say Gordon did not get killed, but after Gordon was shown jumping out of the window
Yeah.
of the second story,
That's a rough one for him.
after it was shown that Gordon jumped out of the second story window, Gordon was not seen on
No.
He's
camera
probably
again.
in the same place as the dog from part 2.
Well,
Yeah.
first off, he's dead or whatever its name was. What's his name?
Muffin.
Muffin. I don't know why I keep wanting to call that dog Fluffy, but look here. Muffin was found on the trail, mangled to death. Half of
Yeah,
it in Jason's belly,
curb
probably.
stomped.
Muffin didn't make it.
brother.
But I'm going to say Gordon made it, man. That's what I'm going to say.
Come on.
I'm
Gordon had to have
team.
made it.
I am team animal, and I am a dog person. And I say that even though you don't see Gordon after he jumps out the window, Gordon is 100% the smartest character in the movie
Yes.
because he jumped out
just
of the
ran
window
away.
and just ran away. Which
he
is
just
what
kept
everybody
running.
should have done.
Dude.
He ran to safety. That's what Gordon ran to, safety.
Hey, one
So-
thing we can all agree is that Gordon was a good boy. That's
was a
what
good
we
boy.
all-
Boy. So, Cade with the point on that one. So right now, as it stands, we've got what? Corky with 1, Cade with 1, and Brent with 2. Is that where we're at?
Dang, yeah, man. I shouldn't have thrown that bonus
If you
question
count
out
the,
there.
if you count,
You got it right. You got it right.
All right, so my question number 4, and this is you got to think, okay? So logically, what day was part 4 on? It's a little bit of a trick question, but you got to think
I'm
about
thinking
it.
it's got to be Sunday, right? Sunday the 15th? Sunday or Monday?
I'll take a guess.
Take a guess.
I think. Let's see. They do stay. I think it was on Saturday. Saturday
that's
night.
what I was going to say.
Cade says Saturday, Brent says Saturday, Corky said Sunday. Corky gets a half a point.
Okay, I'll take it.
All right, so you got to think about this. If part 2 happened on Friday, then part 3 would have happened on Saturday. And Saturday night, they were taking
Right.
Jason to the morgue.
Yeah,
So
that would
you
have been the
could-
morgue scene.
Actually, no, it wasn't Saturday night.
Would have
It
been
was,
Sunday morning, right?
It would have been Sunday morning. Whenever the cops get there, they're taping everything off. Sunday night is whenever they're actually transporting Jason to the hospital. I don't know why they let him lay there all day while the cops are there, but that was Sunday. And then Monday is whenever Jason gets back to Camp Crystal Lake to
I
deal
could
with the
see that
Jarvises.
because they probably rented that house for the week and they showed up on Monday. That was the first day they got there.
So Corky
it's a
saying
sign-off.
Sunday, I'll give him a half a point for it because
Yeah.
technically it was a trick question. It was Sunday and Monday.
Okay.
All right, I'll take that half a point.
Cool.
All right, so that's half point. So then my next question: what does Tommy ask for in order to fix the car when it breaks down on the side of the road? Cade, go.
Screwdriver.
He does ask for a screwdriver. Cade with the point. All right, we'll go into how many masks does Tommy show Rob?
Corky.
Cade.
Corky, go.
You got it.
2.
He does show him 2 masks, even though that there's
Nice.
many more masks that are hanging in Tommy's room. Tommy only shows Rob 2 masks. All right, now we're going to switch over to the party. So now they're at the party. What kind of beer were they all drinking at the party?
Corky.
What was it? Corky, go.
Coors Original.
Dang it, I knew it was
Yeah,
close.
Corky with the point.
Man,
Now,
he's pulling
I
away.
am-
This was my best chance to win. Is this week?
now we got to go over the recap. So where are we at? We got Cade with 2, Brent
2.
with 2, Corky with 2.5.
Yes.
3.5.
I think.
3.5.
3.5. Okay, Corky with 3.5. Brent,
You have
Cade
to ask at least
with
2
2.
more questions so that we can have a chance.
All right. So what does Jim ask for right before he gets killed?
Wait, which one's
and
Jim again? Which
Jim
one's
is Crispin.
Cade.
Cade, go.
It was like a bottle opener or like a like for a wine bottle, like a corkscrew. What's it called?
All right, a corkscrew.
Yeah, corkscrew.
He says, "Hey Ted, where's the corkscrew?" And Ted don't answer him, and he starts yelling, "Hey Ted, where's the corkscrew?" And then he ends up getting a
his death
corkscrew.
was pretty brutal as well.
He gets a
Honestly,
corkscrew
his-
slammed through his hand, and then
and a machete to his face.
the machete to the face. And then, so that was all of my trivia questions. That was it.
The Corky wins.
The
Hey,
Corky
I've got a
wins.
bonus one for you guys.
All right, so
Okay.
bonus.
So Corey Feldman asked for a screwdriver to start the car.
Yeah.
What does Rob actually use to start the car?
A knife.
Brent.
Daniel got it. Right.
I was gonna say a knife. You've got to
pulled
say your
out-
name
okay,
first. You got to
hold
say
up,
your
hold
name
up.
first.
Hold up. He uses a knife, but what does Corey Feldman tell Rob that he thinks the problem is?
It's with a solenoid.
That's the solenoid. There you go.
So let's talk
Nice.
about that scene for a minute. So we just meet this guy that come out of the woods with a backpack and a rifle attached to it, right? And he helps us
And
start
he
this
says
car.
that he's hunting bears.
Yeah. So
He's hunting bears.
and they take him back to their house with his backpack and rifle. And then Tommy takes him up to his room to show him masks, and he doesn't even know him from Adam or Eve. So what sense does that
These
scene
people in
make
the
that he's
80s
going to
didn't
take this
care.
total stranger up to his room?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
and
that
not
makes no
only-
sense.
Not only that, the mom or the sister also tells him, "Oh yeah, Tommy leaves the door open half the time, so
Yeah.
just
Bro,
feel
like,
free
you
to
don't
come
know
in."
him. Like, quit.
Some
Like,
of these
you
scenes
can
just
walk in
go
on
on.
us at any time. We're always here.
Yeah.
Tommy
yeah,
leaves the
never
door open all the time.
Like, when are they going to put a sign up at this lake to stop hanging around here in the summer?
How about just don't come
All right,
back
so-
to Crystal Lake?
Just tell, yeah.
Well, here's another topic though. Okay, so in every single Friday the 13th movie, except for one of them, it rains. Okay, so you've got Rob that's over here hanging out with the Jarvises, and it's about time for Rob to head on out. It's time for him to go set up his campsite.
Yeah.
And Trish walks him out, and he gives her a kiss on the cheek, and then they kind of have a little short conversation, and he walks off, right?
Keep in mind that
Okay,
she's
so
known him
then-
for 10 minutes.
Yeah, she's known him for like
Very
10
trusting
seconds.
lady.
Yeah.
So the next thing we know is it's raining, and it goes into this scene with Rob where he hears something out in the woods. He kind of walks away from his campsite. Then he turns around and he sees Jason walking away from his tent. So he goes back to his tent, and Jason has busted up his gun. But the next thing that we see is now the Jarvises are completely gone.
Right.
Trish and Corey Feldman, or Trish and Tommy, rather, they're in the car driving for no reason whatsoever in the rain. And the mom is out like jogging in the rain, apparently, for no reason. It's raining, it's dark, and Trish just now told Rob, just come back if you need a place to sleep. You know, we're always here. And the next thing, they're gone in the car, and the mom is gone. There is no, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm asking if anybody caught it because I didn't. There is no dialogue whatsoever that leads you to believe that the Jarvises are going to be gone from their home.
No.
No,
Like
there's
they're just
nothing.
I'm
They just
guessing
up
they
and
went
go.
to town and
Yeah.
ate dinner. That's the only thing I can figure. But the mom was by herself, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I was curious about that when that happened, because the mom acted like she didn't know where the other two were.
Yeah, so I guess you might argue that the mom, because she had already been on Trish about not jogging around the lake, because they jogged around the lake earlier in the movie and they had a little conversation about their dad, about Trish's dad.
Yeah.
So the mom had already said, you need to go join me at the lake or whatever, missed you this morning or whatever it was that she said. So you could say that it's plausible for the mom to have jogged around the lake and it started raining and then she comes in by herself. But she didn't tell nobody that she was going to go jog. And then Trish and Tommy, all of a sudden, they just hop back in this car that don't even work. It don't even start. And they drive off someplace and then they come back.
I mean, I
without a
like
problem.
Corky's idea that let's just say that they went out to dinner.
Yeah, that's the only
She took her
way I can make
She
it
took her
make
brother
sense.
out to dinner.
Yeah.
And the mom was killed off screen. Like, you don't really see her. You
Yeah.
think, she's obviously encountered Jason, but you don't see, like, how he killed her or anything. I thought that
Fun
was interesting.
fact, though, originally she wasn't killed off screen. There was actually a death scene, and Jason actually does some sexual stuff to her, and they had to cut it out of the movie because they didn't want to take that route with it. So they ended up just having it as
Really?
an off-screen death then.
Well, that's the second movie in a row that's happened then, because you said the one.
Yeah.
I think it was part 3. Remember the girl was like traumatized because of the past. With
Yeah,
Jason,
yeah.
But it doesn't go into.
It seems like they keep
there's-
trying to write something like that into the movie, and they cut it out.
Well, if you'll remember too, there's always some kind of weird scene that don't make no sense at the very end of these movies. Part
Yeah.
1 had one, Part 2 had one, Part 3 had one. So in Part 4, the deleted scene, they ended up not using it. It was a deleted scene. But in Part 4, after Jason is killed, Trish, it kind of goes to the next day. It's daylight outside. The camera pans over to the house and it goes into the house. It shows Trish sitting on the couch and she wakes up. She doesn't see Jason laying in the floor. She starts looking for Tommy. Can't find Tommy. She walks upstairs and the mom is been killed in the bathtub and she's laying in the bathtub full of water. And then something happens. I can't remember if she's attacked by Jason or if the mom jumps up out of the bathtub or whatever. But it's supposed to be kind of like a dream sequence, and it's another one of those that it's not supposed to make any sense. But they ended up deleting that. But it shows up in the deleted scenes in the movie.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it seems like they tried. A lot of people involved with the movie obviously wanted Jason to be like some kind of, have a sexual side to him. But I'm glad they cut that out because I don't think the movies needed any of that stuff in it.
Yeah, it didn't need it.
It's
I
almost like
agree.
Jason's still like, which it wouldn't make a lot of sense for him to have that as like a character trait, because you almost see at times he's just like a, deranged child still, and so
Yeah.
like the way that his mannerisms
Yeah.
are and stuff.
Well, there was
so-
there was a little bit of symbolism in this too with the mom, and it kind of goes the way that the documentary was talking. The mom looks over and sees the teenagers moving into the house next door, and she looks over and she gives them an unapproving look. Okay. And this is supposed to be very reminiscent of Jason's mom at a camp giving the camp counselors an unapproving look, disapproving.
Really?
So there was some symbolism there, some similarities that they kind of played with there. And then also, with the way that this is filmed, I talked about how this is more like Part 2. This kind of ran more like the way that Part 2 was. In Part 2, Jason ran. In Part 3, Jason didn't run. He just walked. He kind of hobbled after he was about run over by the van, He was almost run over by the van. So he was kind of hobbling, but he wasn't running. In Part 4, he was actually running full out after Trish whenever she was running away from the house.
Oh,
He was-
yeah.
Yeah, he was.
upstairs.
I didn't catch on to that. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was
menacing
running.
'cause, the whole, as we're getting close to the end of the movie, we get to see our final girl, kind of do her own thing here. But like you're talking about, I think the initial encounter I think she has with Jason is when the corpse gets thrown through the window and he climbs through and starts chasing around the house, or was it a little bit before that they actually start to have their
He actually chases her before.
Okay.
Let's see. Rob gets thrown through the window.
Yeah.
And then that's when that whole chase scene starts between
You see him,
Jason and
like
Trish.
you said, he's full on sprinting there.
And he's sprinting.
And that was, that's a freaky scene. I mean, just imagine being chased by that guy.
And that
He's
dude's
a
big,
monster.
too, man. That's
He
the
was
biggest
giant.
Jason of the franchise.
He's a pretty big guy. I
Yeah.
think Richard Brooker might be a little bigger.
You think
but
he was bigger?
a big dude.
They were big
I
guys.
think so. They were big dudes.
And it said that he was in his 50s, actually.
Really?
I think he was 50.
Yeah.
I may not be right, but I think he was 57.
But he was
Dude
moving
from
like,
part 4 or Richard Brooker from part
No,
4?
dude from part 4. He was an older guy.
No
yeah,
kidding.
He was
Yeah.
moving. But, she kind of holds her own decently, because I know that we like to look at our final girls and, judge them for their decisions and whatnot. But this was interesting because, Tommy's in the mix. And obviously, this kid's got, some good sense of judgment with what to do in these dire situations because, obviously Trish throws herself out the window. She didn't have a choice, which I thought, okay, I don't know if you're surviving that or not, but I thought she was dead for a
Well,
second.
she landed perfectly like she was on a
Like
crucifix down there.
Yeah.
Well, and you
She
could
was
see
like-
the way that she was laying. You could see the brace that they set up for the stunt actor that
Yeah.
jumped.
Okay.
So the stunt actor jumps, and then they kind of do a kind of a somersault thing, and then they do a twist. And whenever she lands perfectly. And whenever she lands, you can actually see it give
Yeah.
the supports and all that. That was pretty cool.
But there was a
Whenever
lot of people
Jason-
got through out windows in this movie,
Yeah.
man. Even a
when
dog.
Jason, when
A
Jason
lot
threw that
got thrown
twin
out
out the
windows.
window, I was actually cracking up at that one. That was kind of funny to look at.
Yeah.
She just flies like a rag doll into that car.
So there was that one, but then Rob getting killed in the basement. It's like, okay, we're going to go check out the basement, right? So we're going to
Yeah.
walk down the steps, and then, he must be down here. So we're going to turn around, and we're going to start to run back up, and then the step breaks, and Jason grabs him. So he falls down to the bottom. So Trish just stands there, and as Jason is like, he's got this little garden claw thing, and he's
Yeah.
hitting him with the garden
Beating the
claw.
crap-
Rob
beating
is
him to a
literally
pulp.
yelling, "He's killing me! He's killing me! He's killing me!"
I'm like, dude, this guy's supposed to be a ruthless, like he's been hunting Jason down. I was
Right,
hoping
right.
to see something cool out of him, like a trap or something.
Trish turns around to run back up the steps. She could have easily ran to safety. She could have met up with Gordon, and and
Yeah.
her and Gordon and Tommy could have got back into the car and drove away. But did they? No.
No.
She turned back around and went back into the basement where Jason is at.
God.
I mean, what kind of sense does that make?
0 sense, man.
And then it's this is the other funny part about that whole chase scene, is she finally gets away from Jason. She kicks him back down into the cellar. She runs up to the front door. Okay, so it's where Jason had thrown the hatchet through the front door, and it flew through the front door and killed the
Yeah.
girl. So he drug her
yeah.
dead body and laid her in front of the door, right? Trish opens up the door. Oh, there's a dead body laying there. I can't go that way. Like, no, dude. Jump
Just go.
over the dead body. Just go.
Yeah.
Step over the dead body. There's no obstruction there. But what does she do? She turns around and runs back through the house, past Jason. Jason almost grabs her at that point. Ends up running into Crispin Glover that's been
mangled
staked
up on
to
the
the
door.
back door. And then she turns around, runs back past Jason the second time. At this point, if I was Jason, I'd give up trying to get her because she's run past him 2 times in this house, this tiny little house. Runs upstairs. He chases her upstairs, and that's when she jumps out the window. But I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, if there's a dead body that has been staked up in the door frame of the back door, I can understand why you wouldn't try to maneuver through that dead body. That's an actual obstruction. But a dead body that is just laying on the porch in front of, it's like a dead mouse that a cat dropped off, You got this dead body that's laying in front of the door. You can't step over that? Really?
I might just run around it, dude. Like, what are we doing?
God, I was sitting there like, you got to be kidding me.
Well, when we were
this movie.
watching it, Nicole said, "How did Jason have time to stake that guy to the door?" Like,
Yeah, he just took
He
the
has-
time to hammer his hands in there.
Yeah, like you can't, like Tommy and them, they can't hear. over there next to the next door is like, what's
Must be
going
the
on
house
over there?
settling. Who
It
knows?
always cracks me up to think about these guys like Michael Myers and Jason setting all these traps with bodies and stuff. And you see him dragging a body, trying to prop this guy up so he'll fall when somebody opens the door. I mean,
Yeah.
And so
just
he's
cracks
having
me up.
trouble holding him up while he's got, he's got to hold the whole dead body up, dead
Like,
weight.
can you hold his arm?
Then
for
he's
me real
got to
quick?
get
Let
the
me
nail and the hammer.
Yeah.
so ridiculous. But
That's awesome.
So the final scene, guys, let's break it down, man. Tommy runs up the steps, and he's taking some razor blade. He's shaving his head, and
Yeah.
where do you think gave him that idea to do that? Because
'Cause
we
he
know,
saw-
like
he
in
saw
part
this-
2, Jenny was doing child psychology, but I don't know how a 12-year-old kid would think that.
So
what do
he
you guys
read-
think?
maybe.
He read the newspaper, so he saw in the newspaper that drawing of Jason,
Yeah.
bald-headed. So he was just like, okay, I'll just act like Jason and freak him out or whatever. I'm not real sure what he was thinking, but that's where he got the idea to shave his head. Was Rob had the newspapers, and Tommy ended up looking through the newspapers and reading the articles and reading about how Jason was supposedly drowned a long time ago, and it showed an artist's depiction of him and all this other. Which, that's another thing. Where did they get that artist's depiction of him?
Yeah,
if
because
the
that was a
only-
dream sequence.
Yeah,
I
the
don't know
only
where that
people
came
that's
from.
seen him, the only people that's actually seen him and lived was Jenny from part 2, and Jason had long red hair in that. He wasn't bald.
That was
And-
Appalachian Jason.
And then you got Chick from part 3,
Yeah,
and she went crazy.
she went to the loony bin.
Yeah, she was laughing hysterically whenever they drove her off. So
Well, of
where
course,
did
when
this
this
artist
movie's
come
taking
up?
place, they're just triaging her at the emergency room, probably.
They have a
Yeah,
room
probably.
full of traumatized victims from Jason. And everybody's like, all right, let's go about our day. But I'm guessing maybe like the girl from part 1, she describes that sequence where he jumps out of the water at her. Maybe somehow there she described what he looked like. And then
Well, I
maybe-
guess that's plausible. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
maybe.
You see
Yeah,
him all
maybe.
mangled and stuff. But
I could see that.
But you
Yeah.
know, we see them get chased, but of course, old Tommy here, comes in clutch, stepping up, shaving his head, and then he freaking beats him to a pulp with that machete. I mean, that was crazy. I loved how he went back and double tapped. Like that was
Yeah. So how it
he
goes
just
down,
wailed on him.
he comes down the steps and he starts yelling Jason at him. And then at this point, Jason is just about to kill Trish, But, he keeps yelling at him. Jason turns around. Jason kind of does like the lost puppy dog, tilts his head at him. And that gives Trish just enough time to get up on her feet and just plant that machete right in his dome, son. And again, then that is where we get the most brutal death scene of the movie, in my opinion, is when she puts that machete in the middle of Jason's head and just splits that dude right down the middle. He drops to the ground, and like I said in the director's cut, it doesn't cut away. That machete hits the ground, and he slides down that whole machete blade, and it just splits him wide open. And that dude, the twitch that Tommy sees on his hand, that's that dude's nerves just twitching because he was dead. But with the double tap, Tommy makes sure he's dead, though. That was that was a good time.
And then
That
Took
was a
him
cool
down.
scene.
Took him down.
After that happens, they go to the hospital, and of course, our final girl, Trish, is traumatized like all the other final girls. But we see Tommy's, he's actually, he's not really in a rough state. He goes in to hug Trish. The camera pans on to him in a very, weird, way, almost make it seem like he's deranged in some way, or he's possessed, or
Yeah.
I don't know what that alludes to.
So, well,
course.
that alludes to he was going to be the next Jason.
Yeah,
So-
that's what I was thinking.
He was very severely traumatized. He already had the shaved head look kind of going. He was supposed to be the next Jason. And so when they did make part 5, he was sent to the halfway house whenever he was a teenager. And he was we'll get into it some more, but he was depicted as the killer. He was, the way that it was filmed, it was supposed to make him look like he was the killer.
Yeah,
She's
how the
fascinated with
scene
masks and stuff. So
how the scene takes place is the doctor's in there talking to Trish, and he's telling her, it's normal for kids to have PTSD and stuff like this from a traumatic event like this. And that's when she looks and she says, well, can I see him? And then about that time, you turn around and he's standing there all creepy like, looking at her. And she hugs him and everything. And then, he kind of breaks the fourth wall and just stares at the camera, as the movie goes on. Yeah. So, yeah, Daniel's right. They're alluding to, what's this dude going to do when he gets older because he's warped now, And going into part 5, that's exactly what they want you to think as you're watching part 5 because he's got some mental issues, man. And I guess it would warp you if you had to, watch your sister about get killed and watch her plant a machete in somebody's face,
Part 5, does the same actor reprise his role?
No.
Or they change it?
I don't know why they didn't get caught. Probably because he was too young.
Yeah, so in part 5, they actually film a scene in part 5 to where it's an opening scene. Yeah. And it's a dream. And Corey Feldman is still a little kid. So Corey Feldman is still only, 12 or 13 years old, maybe 14. And this, Corey Feldman in this is supposed to be a lot older, like Corky said, 18, 19 years old. And so the actor, Corey Feldman, wasn't old enough to play the role of Tommy for what age that they needed Tommy. So Corey Feldman filmed this opening scene, and it was a dream sequence. He only had like 3 minutes of screen time or something, but he was also filming Stand By Me at the same time, and Stand By Me ended up being, a lot bigger movie than what Friday 13th Part 5 was.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
So yeah, he was filming that at the same time. Actually, because of his filming restrictions with Stand By Me, he couldn't get to location for Friday 13th Part 5 for where they were filming it. So they actually filmed that whole scene where it was raining and they were digging up the grave and stuff. That was in Corey Feldman's backyard.
Really?
That was in his, it was in his mom and dad's backyard.
Awesome.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Filmed it at his house. Cool. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's Friday the 13th Part 4, guys. The only thing left for us to do is rank this bad boy. So before we get started, Brent, tell everybody how we're going to rate Friday the 13th Part 4.
All right. So we're going to do our usual ranking system. We're going to rate this movie off of 5 criteria. That's cultural significance, special effects, music, symbolism, and enjoyment. We're going to rate them 1 through 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. We're going to average the scores out, and that's going to give us the overall score of this movie.
All right. Daniel, I'm going to let you go first, man. Let's hear it.
Shoot, yeah, I'm going to kick this thing off. So the first category, cultural significance. We've talked about this a little bit before earlier in the podcast, and this is the heyday of 1980s horror. They really went all in with the kill count. They went all in with special effects and the gore, with, of course, the nudity and all this. So this is in prime horror fashion. So that makes the cultural significance for this a 9 for me. The symbolism, there was a couple of things about this that had some symbolism in it. I talked the first time about Tommy Jarvis's mom, how she kind of looked over at the kids that are moving into the house, and she gives them a disapproving look. You've got the whole issue with Tommy at the end when he shaves his head to look like Jason. All of that is symbolic. And then you've got the whole, nostalgia factor. For me, everything is symbolic as far as me watching this movie. This is just like what Corky said. This is a comfort movie for me. I can turn this movie on at just about any time during the day or night or whatever and watch it, and it's just a fun watch, and it makes me feel like a kid again. So symbolism, go ahead and give it a 7. And then you've got Harry Manfredini's score for this thing. Everything about it, the way that the horns are when it comes on, the whole soundtrack of this movie. You know that you're watching a Friday the 13th movie when you hear it. So music for me is a 10. Special effects, this goes back to Tom Savini's special effects master. I am huge into practical effects. CGI is cool, but give me practical effects any day of the week. And I'm going to go ahead and give the special effects an 8 for this. Overall enjoyment, like I said, for years and years and years, decades even, this was my favorite Friday the 13th. So automatically, that's, a 10 for me. So once you average that out, a 9, 7, 10, 8, 10, you come out with a total of 8.8, which is a 9 for the Friday the 13th Part 4.
All right, man. I can agree with that totally. How does Kade rank Friday the 13th Part 4? Let's hear it, buddy.
All right, so I'll go ahead and dive right in here with cultural significance. Like Daniel mentioned, this movie was huge for the 80s, for all the movies that were coming during that time. Part 3, Part 4, and so on really established Jason, as we know him today. And so I felt like an 8 was a pretty good score for cultural significance. Moving on from there with symbolism, this movie is, not going to be something crazy like Silence of the Lambs like we watched last week in terms of, hidden twists. There's a few in here with that. So I felt like an average score of a 5 for symbolism was pretty fair. Looking at the music for this, the score is super good. It adds just, the hidden, Jason hiding somewhere, coming out, popping up and killing somebody. You hear the loud screech of an instrument. They played that really well with all the kills, just adding to the horror there. So I think I give this one a 7 for music. The special effects, we've mentioned before, Tom Savini, I believe that's his name, returns for this movie, and he absolutely kills it. I mean, the kills in this movie are, I think, probably the best in the series that I've seen so far. It starts out with a bang, with the death of Axel there. I mean, like Brent mentioned, that being his favorite kill. That was super sick to see. So I give it a 9 for special effects. And overall enjoyment, I loved watching this movie. Kind of like what Corky said, you can play this movie, pick it up whenever you need to, and you'll be entertained no matter what. So I'm giving it a 9 for overall enjoyment. And that puts me at a 7.6, which averages to an 8 out of 10 for me for Part 4 here.
Awesome, man. Brent, how do you rank this beautiful movie we just watched, buddy? Your turn.
All right. So, cultural significance for me, I agree with Dad and Kade. That's an 8. Like Dad said at the beginning of this podcast, whenever you think of Jason, you think of Jason Part 4, Jason Part 3, Part 4. Obviously, we haven't made it to Part 6 yet, but I've heard Part 6 as well.
I can't wait. I'm a teenage Frankenstein, baby.
Alice Cooper, baby.
But yeah, cultural significance, I give it an 8 out of 10. Special effects, I agree with everyone. Tom Savini, the movies that we've seen from him so far, the special effects have been great. Just like Dad said, again, I love practical effects. For me, I hate CGI. I don't care how good it looks. I just don't like it. Practical effects. I would rather have cheesy practical effects than have good CGI. I just like practical effects.
Any day of the week, man. I agree totally with that.
So 8 out of 10 for special effects. The music, very similar to last week and the previous episodes as well. I love the Friday the 13th soundtrack. I love the sound. Again, you put it on a Halloween playlist. Everyone knows as soon as you get the kick, ma. Everyone knows that's Friday the 13th. So 8 out of 10. Symbolism. This is really the score that brings it all down because this movie has almost no symbolism. I mean, yeah, I did not pick up on what Dad was saying about the mom. That makes sense, but I did not put that into the score. I gave it a 2 only because there's some symbolism with Tommy Jarvis acting like there's some psychology going on, I guess, a little bit of symbolism there. And enjoyment, you guys are going to kill me, but here's the thing about the enjoyment. I give it a 5 out of 10. Here's the deal with.
We'll talk off air about that, buddy.
Here's the deal with this movie. I mean, the Friday the 13th series so far has not been my favorite. I understand how if you grew up with it, it definitely could be your favorite for sure. But to me, all of the movies are very, very formulaic. Like, you know exactly what's going to happen. Like, you don't even... All of the movies are pretty much the same so far. So, the kills are better in this one. But, yeah, I give it a 5 out of 10. But and then that has the overall score with a 6.2, and so that lower that down to a 6 out of 10.
Well, let me just say this:
you've disappointed me, son.
I can still look at Daniel's face.
Respectively disagree with you, sir. And let's just start my review off like this: cultural significance, music, special effects, symbolism, overall enjoyment are all going to be 10s for me because, like I said, comfort movie. Now, I'm just playing with you, Brent. I can see how some of these movies, for the younger generation that did not grow up watching them, I can see how they're probably stupid. But if you grew up watching slasher films, and obviously me and Daniel did, these movies kind of hit a little bit different for us. You know, nobody's going to win an Oscar or an Emmy or whatever you win for these movies in any of them, but they're just great movies. They represent a time and a place. To me, that's just a better place to be. Stuff was simpler back then, and movies were just better back then. So this movie gets 10s all the way around for me, which ends up being an average score of 10. So average all that up, Kade, and let us know what the movie ends up being.
Yeah, that puts us at an average of 8.25 or an 8 out of 10.
Would have been higher if somebody hadn't gave it 6s, though. But, you know,
hey, I'm sorry. Hey, I just want to say before we leave, I can respect Corky's and Dad's opinion on this, because growing up watching this movie, I can see 100% how it could be a comfort movie. Definitely, if these were movies that were on Friday nights, like you're kicking off the weekend and you're just kind of sitting back and watching a scary movie, I can see exactly how this could be a comfort movie. I respect that, and I have movies like that too. I respect that, and they're still fun to watch. You know,
they're fun.
5 out of 10. So that's an average. That's just an average movie. So.
As my son, you have spit in my face, sir. You have spit in my face as my son, as your father.
You have dishonored your family name.
You have dishonored the family name. God.
Hey, that's coming from the guy that rated The Howling 2 higher than The Shining. I just want everyone to remember that.
Rate The Howling 2 higher.
Listen, The Howling 2 is in its own category of movies.
That's right.
Awesomely bad movies can't be taken seriously as real good movies.
No.
But on the awesomely bad movie scale, that movie is awesome, man.
Yes, it is. It gets 10 God rights, man.
Yeah, we're not ranking that movie as a true movie that you would actually think is a true. That movie is god awful, but it's so awful, it's awesome.
It is so awesome.
That's just a different type of movie. So, but anyhow, what did we say it averaged out to be? 8.4, Kade?
8.25.
8.2.
So 10, that's what you said. Okay, so it averaged out to be a 10. But that's Friday the 13th, part 4 from the Remember That podcast. Appreciate everybody listening to us. If there's any movie you'd like to see us or hear us cover or anything like that, email us at rememberthatpodcast@yahoo.com. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. It helps the channel. It's growing. It's growing a lot. Our views are pretty high, so we appreciate everybody doing that. Until next week, we appreciate everybody listening to us. And from myself, Daniel, Kade, and Brent, we'll see you guys next week. See ya, bye.
See ya, bye.
See
ya, bye.
Peace out.
Remember, we keep it tight, and it's a podcast world. We're ready to ignite. That's the lesson. You got it all. Tune in, turn up, come vibe with us, y'all. So remember.